Bomb in Boston Celtics. Sad trade with Jaylen Brown shocks the NBA. If you're a Boston Celtics fan, your heart probably sinks with everything people are saying about Jaylen Brown, right? The feeling that the team could be throwing away years of construction hurts a lot. Calm down. Breathe with me. In today's video, I'm going to show you what's really happening in this possible trade, what it means for the future of the Celtics, and most importantly, why there may still be an intelligent path for us to come out of this situation stronger. So stay with me until the end, because you won't leave this video thinking the same way. Before we dive into the details of this possible exchange, here's what my Celtics partner says. Subscribe to the channel now, because here you will always know about Boston bombs before anyone else. Leave a like because it shows YouTube that Celtics fans are different and pushes this video to more fans like you. Activate the bell so you don't miss any updates, rumors, or analysis about our team. Have you clicked yet? So come on, because now I'm going to tell you exactly why this trade with Jaylen Brown could change everything for the Celtics and what no one is telling you about it. Let me ask you a direct question. At what point does a team's greatest virtue begin to reveal its biggest problem? Because that's exactly where the Boston Celtics seem to be stuck right now, at the intersection of brilliance and vulnerability. On the one hand, an extremely efficient attack, impressive numbers, a season in which Neemias Queta emerges as one of the league's biggest surprises and gives the game a new look. On the other, an uncomfortable feeling that, if nothing is done, precisely this structure that places the team among the best could be what will prevent the Celtics from reaching what every fan dreams of, lifting the trophy before the 2026-27 window closes for good. And as this happens, Jayson Tatum is out, cast is adjusting, rotations are being tested, and one question starts to get harder and harder to ignore. Will Boston be able to find a really reliable center to share responsibilities with the main core, or will it watch, idly, as the era of this big three falls apart because it didn't solve the basics of basketball, protecting the rim and dominating the paint? Today I want to talk to you exactly about this. It's not just about statistics, it's not just about contracts, it's about what this team is, what it can be, and what it risks never becoming. The message you can't ignore. Let's start with Jaylen Brown. When a rotation player talks about the team's effort, you can even treat it as a heat-of-the-moment vent. But when the speaker is one of the franchise's main stars, right after a painful defeat to the Brooklyn Nets, the scenario changes completely. Jaylen didn't choose words at random. He did not name any player when he praised the attitude of Hugo Gonzalez and Jordan Walsh. And most importantly, he also chose who not to name. That, inside a locker room, speaks volumes. When a star looks at two young players with only a few minutes and praises their dedication on the court while passing by more established names, the message is clear, even if it doesn't come in a tone of direct criticism. There are players who are comfortable. There are people who are not running at the same speed as the rest, and the gameplay video confirms this. In that 19-4 run in the third quarter, when Brooklyn took control of the game, the Celtics' most athletic perimeter defenders were sitting back. On the court, formations with Luka Garza and Baylor Shireman, two players who have virtues in attack, but who simply cannot keep up, physically and laterally, with the NBA's most explosive athletes in transition. The result? Attacks suffered in defense, poorly protected transition, constant mismatches, comfortable opponent. And meanwhile, the fans at home are asking themselves, why are the guys who can defend the best on the bench? This tactical and effort confusion is a symptom of something bigger. It's not just about a poorly planned game. It's about how this cast is being used, about who is being charged and who is being protected. The unsustainable load of the core. Now, think with me about the situation of the incumbents. Brown, Derek White, and the rest of the core have been demanded at a very high level. There are many minutes, many decisive possessions, a lot of responsibility in offensive creation, and at the same time, a huge defensive demand. To some extent, this is normal for any team that wants to be champions. The stars play more, the core is required more, the main players decide. But there is a fine line between being a protagonist and being overwhelmed. And in the case of Boston, that line is dangerously close to being crossed. When a team is among the worst in defensive rebounding, that's not just a detail. It means that, after defending a possession well, the work is not done. The team is forced to defend again because they are unable to close the rebound. This is exhausting, physically and mentally. You defend the play, force the error, but don't kill the possession. It undermines confidence, saps energy, and over time turns effort into inattention. This is how tiredness becomes sloppiness, and sloppiness becomes the narrative. This team doesn't try hard enough. But often it's not a lack of will. It's an excess of responsibility added to an unbalanced cast. Game philosophy X, cast reality. Joe Mazzulla has a clear idea, a dynamic team that runs, accelerates, plays in transition, and puts pressure on the opponent with pace. In theory, this is fantastic. A fast Celtics with multiple offensive weapons attacking the basket at high speed, punishing slow defenses. But then comes the reality of the numbers. The team enters the week as one of the last in terms of pace, that is, in the number of possessions per game, but at the same time it is among the best attacks in the league in terms of efficiency. What does this reveal? That the Celtics are very good at playing in the half court, calmly, building more calculated attacks. And this story of a fast team has not yet really translated onto the court, either due to the way the squad was assembled or due to the inability to compete physically in transition against more athletic opponents. Now think about situations in which the team tries to force this style without having the ideal pieces. Players who don't have the physique for a high-intensity game suffer. The defensive rebound fails. The counterattack fails. The team finds itself stuck in a limbo between being aggressive and being efficient. The inevitable question is, who has to adapt to whom? The cast to the philosophy or the philosophy to the cast? If the defense does not support a faster pace, if the rebound does not guarantee the exit in transition, the dream of a fast team becomes an ideal that is beautiful on paper but fragile on the court. And the playoffs do not forgive this type of inconsistency. Neemias Queta, solution, symbol, and limit. In the midst of all this, Neemias Queta appears. Queta arrives as one of those stories that every fan likes to follow. A player who enters through the bottom door with a two-way contract, little external expectations, and suddenly finds his space, shows impact, becomes a topic of conversation, gains confidence, is rewarded with a longer contract, and starts to be seen as a piece of the future. On the court, he delivers exactly what fans have been asking for a long time: physical presence. He runs well to the rim, contests, fights for offensive rebounds, bothers him in the paint, changes shots simply by being there, big, active, energetic. The attack, which was already efficient, gains an important point of balance. Someone who doesn't need the ball in their hands to contribute. When Tatum returns at full strength, Queta will not be asked to create plays, but rather to complete, receive close to the basket, finish, protect the rim, guarantee extra possessions on the boards. It's exactly the type of role that many champion teams knew how to value in their pivots. But like almost everything in the NBA, this story also has a worrying side. Queta still commits a lot of fouls when he is on the court for long periods. In a regular season game, sometimes that goes away. In a playoff game, where every possession matters, this type of fragility can be fatal. Furthermore, post-season play is a cruel laboratory of mismatches. Opponents will test marking changes. They will force Queta to defend shorter, faster players. They will exploit him away from the rim. Well-designed pick-and-roll schemes from teams like Miami or attacks entirely focused on infiltration, like those guided by Jonas in Milwaukee, know exactly where to look for an advantage. Queta can, indeed, be a starter for 20 to 25 minutes per game on a champion team. This is entirely plausible. But is he, today, the pivot you want on the court in the last 2 minutes of a conference final Game 7? This is the question that fans need to have the courage to face. Admiring a player's growth doesn't mean putting him on a pedestal he hasn't yet reached. And the board cannot confuse a promise with a definitive solution. The bottle puzzle. This is where the subject comes up against something that doesn't always appear prominently in broadcasts, but that decides the future of any franchise. The combination between basketball and finance. You don't put together a title squad just with desire. There is a salary cap, there is a luxury tax, there are long contracts that block movement, there are draft picks that need to be used or preserved intelligently. The Celtics have already made it clear what the main plan is. keeping Tatum, Brown, and White together. It's not a difficult choice to understand. When you have three players at that level, all on the rise, you don't change one of them without a very strong reason. The story. The league is full of teams that regretted dismantling a core too soon. But by keeping the core untouchable, the room for maneuver decreases. The franchise's main exchanges become intermediate contracts, such as that of a player at the end of a more expensive contract and some complementary contract. It is through these salaries that you equalize values in negotiations for a pivot with greater impact. And then comes the other layer, the desire to avoid the luxury tax in a given year. Each extra million on the payroll weighs not only on your pocket, but on future punishments for transactions. Trying, at the same time, to reinforce the tank with a reliable pivot, maintain flexibility for the future, and still avoid taxes is an almost juggling exercise. You need a specific player, a starting-level center, with real impact, earning less than a certain amount per season, available for trade and aligned with the age and competitive moment of the squad. It's not that there aren't any players like that, but it's a short, expensive, and competitive list. It is unlikely that an elite center, young and at his physical peak, will be placed on the market without demanding in return a name like Jaylen Brown or Derek White. And this is precisely the type of movement that the franchise wants to avoid. Therefore, the focus is on the so-called second echelons of the position. Solid players with clear strengths, but with obvious limitations. Pivots who may not be stars, but who raise the team's defensive floor and stabilize the box. These are names of this profile that realistically come on the radar. Physical defenders, good rebounders, perhaps not as versatile offensively, but capable of holding 20 to 25 minutes of quality in a playoff series. None of them are perfect, but some may be exactly enough. And in many cases, enough is all that separates a contender from a team that always falls one step earlier. Rhythm, identity, and what really wins the championship. Another point that cannot be ignored is the issue of game pace. There is no single formula to be a champion. Some teams won by playing in transition, attacking without stopping. Others dominated the half-court with suffocating defenses and surgical attacks. The problem is not playing fast or slow. The problem is trying to be something you're not. Today, Boston finds itself in a kind of uncomfortable middle ground. He wants to accelerate, but he doesn't have enough defensive rebounds to do so. It wants to be intense, but it relies too much on players who are already overloaded. He has excellent offensive numbers, but they are supported by a more rhythmic game than the narrative suggests. Champion teams in general share one characteristic. They have more than one gear. They know how to speed up when the moment calls for it and slow down when they need to control the clock. They know how to punish in transition, but they also know how to win tough, low-scoring matches. Today, the impression is that the Celtics have just one way of playing with maximum efficiency. Well-executed half-court, with game reading, movement, patiently built advantage. This works in the regular season, but in a long playoff series where the opponent adapts, adjusts, and forces you out of your comfort zone, being predictable is a risk. Without a reliable big box, without a solid defensive rebounder, without a center capable of protecting the rim, and at the same time being able to stay on the court against different styles, it is difficult to change gears when necessary. The window that waits for no one. Perhaps the most delicate point in this whole conversation is time. Jayson Tatum is at the age where many players reach the peak of their careers. Jaylen Brown, too. Derek White is experiencing a moment of great maturity. You look at this core and clearly see a team ready to be champions, not in the distant future, but now. But basketball is not a frozen scenario. Injuries happen, age arrives, new teams emerge, opponents reinforce each other. That perfect combination of talent, experience, and fit that seems obvious today may not exist in the same way 3 or 4 years from now. This is why so many people talk about title window. It does not mean that after this period the team will never be competitive again, but it does mean that there is a period of time in which the chances are objectively greater. For Boston, that window most likely spans the next 3 seasons. If the problem is not corrected now, the risk is to look back in a few years and realize that just when the team had the talent to be champions, they were missing a specific piece in a specific position, which prevents many promising squads from becoming true champions. And in scenarios like this, painful decisions often appear, changing one of the main players to start over, dismantling a core loved by the fans, accepting a longer reconstruction. No one who is a Celtics fan wants to see this happen due to a lack of courage in attacking a clear problem while there is time. The turning point. Ultimately, all of this brings us to a crossroads. On the one hand, a team with a very strong attack, a very high-level core, a young center on the rise, a coach with well-defined ideas and a base that, in theory, should be enough to compete for the title for years. On the other, defensive holes that repeat themselves, difficulty in controlling the rebound, rhythm problems, questionable rotation decisions, and great uncertainty regarding the performance of the big box in decisive moments. Bringing in a pivot that raises the defensive level of the big box no longer seems like an option. It seems like a necessity, whether it's a player like the ones we've already mentioned as an example, or another piece that's yet to appear on the market. Boston needs someone who stabilizes the team from within, who allows Brown and Tatum to defend with more confidence, who eases the burden of physical effort on the starters, and who gives the coach the possibility of adjusting the rhythm without falling apart at the back. Jaylen Brown's comments weren't just a rant. They sounded like an alert inside the locker room and outside, to the board and to the fans. We're close, but close isn't enough. The Celtics have talent, they have structure, they have fans, they have history. What remains at this moment is to transform potential into urgency. It means looking at the bottle not as a detail to be fixed along the way, but as the central axis of any real title ambition. And that's why I want to hear from you too. Do you think the Celtics should go all out in their search for a center in this upcoming trade period and off-season, even if it involves giving up some beloved pieces or draft picks? Or do you believe that Neemias Queta, with development and confidence, can become that definitive pillar that is missing in the bottle? Tell us your vision below, because this discussion is not just tactical or financial. It involves identity, the courage to accept construction mistakes, and the real desire to leave the comfort zone. If this type of analysis makes sense to you, if it helps you see the team beyond the day's score, participate, comment, share, and follow, because each step taken by Boston in the coming seasons could be what will define whether this generation will be remembered as a great promise or as a champion who made the right adjustment at the right time. And this is where everything is decided. Either the Boston Celtics admit once and for all that they are one bottle adjustment away from transforming potential into a title, or they run the risk of going down in history as that team that had talent, had a squad, had a star, but lacked the courage to solve the most obvious problem of its own construction. It is no longer possible to treat this issue as a detail. Either the Celtics face that reality now, or they will watch others lift the trophy while stuck in the almost. If you want to continue following this journey in depth, without superficiality, and without making mistakes about where this team really is, the next step is clear. As soon as this video ends, go straight to the Celtics Analyzes playlist, which is in the comment pinned here below. There I delve deeper into each of these topics: rotation, tactical adjustments, the market, Neemias Queta, the future of the core, and everything that can take Boston to the top or keep it away from it. Click on the playlist, binge-watch the videos, and come be part of those who not only support, but understand what is at stake for the Boston Celtics in the coming years. Because whether we like it or not, the clock has already started ticking.